Good evening. 4 years ago, I was in Parliament Square. There was the most enormous party. We were leaving the European Union at 11 p.m, and it really was quite a moment. But hey, here we are. 4 years on, got to ask the question, is life getting better? Well, I think most people would say that life isn't getting better, but not because of Brexit. And despite the negativity that we get from many commentators, as if everything from the weather to the economy that we can blame is to be blamed on Brexit, I think the truth of it is that if we look back at what happened 4 years ago this evening, it was a gigantic victory, an extraordinary victory of ordinary folk against an establishment who did their damnedest after the referendum to stop it from ever being enacted. Now, I think 4 years on, constitutionally, the position has changed and there is no going back. Even Keir Starmer won't possibly talk about rejoining the European Union. That would be an electoral disaster for him in many, many seats, especially in the Midlands and the north of England. But as somebody who was a Brexiteer before many viewers were even born, and who campaigned for it for over a quarter of a century...
Probably most of your viewers.
Well, maybe, David. I'll introduce you in a moment, I promise. There are great senses of disappointment, and I think perhaps one of the key areas is migration. One of the reasons the turnout was 73%, at least 10% more than the experts thought, was because there was a realistic expectation we'd get back genuine control of our borders, and we've chosen not to exercise that right. So I feel a great sense of disappointment, but I also feel a sense of achievement that constitutionally we've made the change and there is no going back. I'm joined by David Davis. No, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. He's now Sir David Davis. We have to get that right. Member of Parliament for the Conservative Party, or what's left of it, for Halton, Price and Howden, and of course the former Brexit Secretary, and Mike Galsworthy, Chair of the European Movement UK and founder of Scientists for EU. David, you were out there on the road, passionate believer that Brexit was the right thing to do. Do you understand the disappointment many people feel? Yeah,
but also I think a lot of it's based on just non-stop propaganda. I mean, put aside immigration for a second. All the other things we were told. I mean, you and I were fighting against, you're going to have 1 million more unemployed. Oh, no, 150,000 fewer unemployed. You're going to have no exports to Europe. Actually, they've grown by 14%. You're going to have no exports generally. The service exports gone up by 17%, all-time record. Your growth rate's going to be crushed. Actually, we're doing better than Germany and Italy and France. So on all the things that those were talking about, then most of the opponents talking about, we're right, they're wrong. And that's despite the fact, remember, I resigned as Brexit Secretary because I thought Theresa May was not doing it properly. Indeed, today's stuff on Northern Ireland is sort of the rescue of what she got wrong. So even though we didn't do it brilliantly, which is my view, actually it's turned out not bad at all.
I agree with you, David. You look at the GDP figures, etc. It's not been a disaster. However, there are 5.5 million men and women out there running small businesses. They really expected regulations would ease, they'd be freer to run their lives. They haven't been, have they?
Well, that's going to take time, to be frank. I mean,
hang on. How long ago did we vote to leave?
Never mind.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, but look, regulations take time to move. I mean, they're not going to change dramatically overnight, but we've got the right... I mean, frankly, to put it bluntly, we've got the right to make our own mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah, and what you talked about earlier, to some extent, it's probably us making our own mistakes. And at least we can fire the people who do it.
I always argued in the referendum it gave us the right to mismanage our own future, not have it done by somebody else. Mike Galsworthy, what was interesting in the referendum was people like David Davis and I were arguing, look, we can be self-governing, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we'll have a bigger place in the world, etc. We didn't actually spend much time in the referendum saying how awful Brussels was. We'd done that perhaps in the years before. What was interesting about the Remain campaign, it was all, and David's alluded to this, it was all, you're going to be poorer, you're going to be broke, you could catch infectious diseases because medicines won't come in, I mean, all this stuff. At no point did I ever hear a senior figure in the Remain campaign lay out a vision of what was good about the European Union. And I want to ask you now, we're 4 years on, we've left. You guys would like us to rejoin. I mean, for example, last week we saw a senior figure, the leader of the EPP group, the biggest political group, saying he wanted the European Union to have its own nuclear weapons. What kind of European Union? What's your vision for the European Union? Is it this big United States of Europe?
No, because the United States of Europe would then be a country. Like, that wouldn't make sense, and that's not what the countries want. And I certainly take your point about the Britain Stronger in Europe campaign. They were hopeless, and it was completely missing any inspirational vision for any sector of the economy or any demographic in it. It did my head in from Scientists for EU, because in science we can tell all the nice stories about collaboration, what we did, and how that provides added value. And I was saying to them, we need to run with this. And they told me, no, we're just doing economic threat. You do economic threat too, and we just want to get it over the line, and that's our job done. Now, I know where this comes from, because one of the advisors to Cameron back in 2015, Peter Wilding, said, we need to talk about leading in Europe. We haven't really done that properly. We've sort of been grumbling about it, but there are things where we can really lead. And David Cameron said to him, no, I won Scotland on economic threat. I've just got back into power on economic threat. It's what works. We're going with economic threat.
Negative.
Yeah.
And maybe in Scotland it had worked.
And furthermore, he had no time to build up a positive case, because he decided that he was just going to do it in about a 4-month dash. And the reason why, and I got this actually from Alan Johnson of the Labour Remain campaign, he was the first one who told me. And I said, but he said that, you know, he would have a referendum before the end of 2017. Why is he rushing it now? And he said 2 reasons. One, he thinks that the Leave campaign is split between Leave.eu and Vote Leave, and so he thinks that he can catch them in chaos. And secondly, he wants to have it before the summer, because if you remember in 2015, when you had the migrant crisis across the Channel, he didn't want that, and he wanted to get the vote done before that.
Well,
so basically, he just rushed it and put out no vision.
In fact,
and
the migrant crisis,
for it.
the migrant crisis then was the Mediterranean, to be fair, not the China. But you know, you say we don't want a country, we want to cooperate. You do so as a scientist. But so why have they got a flag? Why have they got an anthem? And why do they want nuclear weapons? Their own independent nuclear weapons.
Yeah. This is a great question about the flag and anthem, and I would like to demand the same of Liverpool FC. What do they think they're doing with their own flag and their own anthem? Who do they think they are? That's ridiculous. They're trying to take over the world. But their law, lots of people have different flags and anthems.
Their law is not superior over Manchester, and that's the point.
Yeah, but also with the flag. The flag, everyone says it's the EU flag. It's not. It was put together in 1955, you know, in the whole surge of passion that came out of Winston Churchill and others, and it was adopted.
I've stood in the European Parliament with them all standing ramrod to attention. Yep. I was there during the Constitutional Convention 20 years ago. They are building a state, a global superpower. Why should we rejoin it?
It's not, because...
You're in denial. You see, you're in denial. Even now, when I give you the chance to give me the positive vision for why we should rejoin.
No, I'll give you the positive vision, but I'm not going to accept that it's going to become one country, because the nation states are still in control. They sign off on everything.
2 points. I mean, one point on the flag and the anthem. I was there in Taormina when they first introduced it. I mean, I committed to solecism by refusing to stand up. The only person in the whole room. I thought I could be thrown out the Foreign Office. But you know, the other thing I'll say to you, Mike, is, you know, what a tragedy that actually it wasn't positive vision versus positive vision. Because once you start a negative attack, we had to defend against a negative attack. You know, it would have been brilliant to say that this is what the alternative futures of Britain are.
Totally. And this is also where I think the BBC let us down hugely. And you're probably not going to like this, but all I saw on the BBC was old white conservative males for Leave versus old white conservative males for Remain. I thought when I started Scientists for EU...
You're not that Priti Patel.
Look, there were data done as well. There were stats done about who were the dominant talking heads during that period. But you want positive vision. This is what I'd hoped that the referendum campaign was going to be. You get farmers in a room, they talk about farming, what's important to farming, and whether being in the EU, outside of it, would be advantageous to them from a community perspective. Similarly with fishing, similarly with tech, similarly with science. That's what I thought it was going to be like. That you really, you know, go into the country, you interrogate different communities about what's working for them, what's not. Is immigration bad for them or good for them?
Ultimately,
good for them or bad for them?
Ultimately, what's interesting is this. London said, we must remain. The country said, we must leave. We've left. We're 4 years on. Do you accept we're not rejoining?
No, we are going to go back and join again,
When?
for sure. Well, look at the demographics. I mean, right now, if you take polling about whether people want to rejoin or want to stay out, it's pretty solid. 60% for joining again, 40% for staying out. Don't interrupt me here, because here's the kicker. You break that down by age, and you see that big millennial wave coming in. I'm sorry, boomer guys, but they view our UK-EU relationship very differently.
It is fascinating, because Marine Le Pen is now leading in the under-30s.
Yep.
The AFD are leading in the under-30s.
Yep.
Georgia Maloney's support is young, not middle-aged and old.
Star.
I do a bit of TikTok. I don't do any harm. Really interesting.
I'm glad I haven't come across that yet.
Right across Europe, it's the youth right across Europe who are saying, we don't want this vision, we don't want these old unelected people in Brussels running our lives. Actually, it's the youth. And the whole European structure is falling apart. They're arguing like cats and dogs over migration.
You've been saying this for decades.
And now it's
Any
happening.
day now it's going to fall apart. Any day
it's happening.
This politician, it's going to fall apart tomorrow. But it's not. It's actually more robust than ever. And actually, thanks to you and thanks to Brexit, you actually saw chaos in the EU from 2008 onwards because of the euro crisis, because of the immigration crisis across the Mediterranean. And they were at 6s and 7s. But when they had to negotiate against the UK, there was incredible cohesiveness that come then.
Amongst governments, Mike, yes. But the point I'm making is there's a younger generation in Europe viewing this in a very different way. They have no memory of the Second World War. They don't see it as a project for peace, as perhaps their parents and grandparents did. The Labour Party
do see it as a project for opportunity, for
Labour
jobs,
Party
for exchanges, for working together on climate change.
You can do all of that without a political union. The Labour Party
you can do it better when you're working as a better team.
The Labour Party may mirror EU rules, and some could argue the Tory Party have not diverged enough from them. There's no prospect of Starmer taking us back into the EU, is there?
No, not with Starmer. Well, certainly not in the first term. But at the moment, Starmer has no interest in that debate because he is trying to take the heat out of all of it, and basically he wants to focus on, quite frankly, David, the mess that the Conservatives have made across the country in lots of dimensions. There was austerity, then Brexit, then COVID, and all three have been mismanaged.
I don't think
his priority is to come in and say, I'm a safe pair of hands to tidy this up.
Starmer won't take us out. It's done, David, isn't it? We've left. It's not going to be reversed.
Look, I mean, Starmer does take... I mean, two things. I mean, firstly, your cohort you're talking about grew up with all these fearsome threats. You know, you're going to lose your jobs. There's going to be no future in science, for example. All that. It's turning out to be
Who
nonsense.
said that? Whoever said that?
Osborne,
there's no
Cameron.
No, they didn't say there's no future in science.
They did.
No, I was leading scientists for a year.
Hang on, David, last word to David Davis on this.
But so that's going to change. And what we're saying, what you're saying, is it's not going to happen for 10 years. In 10 years, they're going to learn what freedom feels like. And that's actually going to be good, irrespective of the government. Doesn't matter which government. They're going to have to make their own decisions, their own mistakes sometimes. But what will happen over that time is they'll realise there's nothing to fear outside and everything to gain. And that's what we're playing for.
Right, well, there we are. That's the end of our debate. 4 years on from Brexit night. I have to say, we're not going to rejoin. I'm still disappointed we haven't broken away further. In a moment.